Oh, hello. Good book, AI. The question is, can AI ever be what man is? John Lennox and I agree that that can never happen. But that's a discussion for another time. Now, let's take a look at a face-off between an evolutionist and a creationist.
Good evening. Welcome to Evolution is Life. We have as our guest today the inconsequential has-been proponent of creationism. Give it up for the undereducated Clyde C. Clyde. Mr. Clyde, may I call you Grandpa Clyde?
Just Clyde is fine.
Just Clyde, you have presented a few idiotic, asinine, attempted counters to the scientific proven fact of evolution. I was hoping we could discuss a few of those today.
That'd be great, Reginald.
Dr. Schnellhund.
Dr. Schweinhund.
Schnellhund.
That would be great. Schnellhund.
Could we begin with some of the most recent and irrelevant creationist claims? Where would you like to start?
Carbon-14 has recently been found in diamonds.
You weasel-faced cucumber, you start right off with this young Earth creation idiocy. Surely you know you cannot date a substance older than about 50,000 years using carbon-14. Yes, so obviously you cannot date diamonds using carbon-14. You should know that. Duh. Laughing emoji. Laughing emoji. LMAO.
Because of the relatively short half-life of carbon-14, after about 50,000 years, all the carbon-14 would have decayed into carbon-12, so there would be no carbon-14 in diamonds.
It's a small point. Let's move on. What else have you got? We'll set that aside for now.
Recently, paleontologists have found soft tissue in dinosaur bones.
Yes, I've heard that one. And then you're going to say soft tissue could not have survived millions of years. But you animated garden gnome, studies have shown that soft tissue could possibly survive 1,000,000 years.
Studies. How could a study tell if something organic would still survive after 1,000,000 years? Take this Twinkie, for example. Is there any study that's going to show you that this Twinkie will still survive 1,000,000 years from now? Maybe that was a bad example. There are more evidences that suggest a young Earth. Decay of the Earth's magnetic field, salinity of the oceans, population statistics, genome decay, more. I've discussed those in other places, looked at evolutionary counters, and discussed those.
It proves nothing. It's deflection.
Hardly that, Dr. Skullschwund.
Schnellhund.
Yeah, whatever. But millions of years is critical to evolution. The evolutionist will say, given enough time, anything can happen. The evolutionist tries to drown the true impossibility of an event in
the incomprehensibility of unimaginable time. Young Earth takes away that incomprehensibility and drives a stake into the heart of evolution. But isochron dating supports millions of years. How would you answer that, my myopic, disadvantaged friend? Isochron dating is based on unprovable assumptions. The decay rate of the mineral has been constant over time, or the mineral has been a closed system over time. Nothing has moved in or out. The Institute for Creation Research made an 8-year study on the isochron process. They call it the RATE, R-A-T-E study. You can download it. ICR, totally biased organization. Of course it is. It's right in the name, Institute for Creation Research. But you use bias to avoid the truth. You use bias so you don't have to investigate the data and the information and critically ask, is it right? Is it true? You really are an odious person. Can you give me some of your juvenile tripe that perhaps doesn't depend on your young Earth creationist nonsense?
Sorry. Something was edited from the discussion. Let me tell you about it. Reggie, Dr. Schnellhunt, asked for something that didn't use young Earth as its basis for countering evolution. Clyde's first response was irreducible complexities. Dr. Schnellhunt replied that irreducible complexity had been debunked. Clyde replied that he had seen one of the supposed debunkings and proceeded to illustrate. Consider 3 flat-ish rocks, which I'll call pavers, perhaps forming a path across a small stream. A 4th paver places itself on the 2 outside pavers. I'm using evolutionary language here. And the center paver goes away. Now we have a bridge, a structural change, but always useful, always functional. Thus was one supposed debunking. But let's look at how simplistic, how void of reason even that example of a debunking is. If the original 3 pavers are functional, what's the force, the reason for the 4th paver? There we have a why that so often is ignored by evolutionists. But moving on. Somehow, a 4th paver finds its way to straddling the 2 outside stones. Note, it must be placed precisely a little bit one way or the other will render it non-functional. Somehow, in a random world, we assume that precision. And it can't be just any 4th paver. Somehow, again, it has to be strong enough to function as a bridge, or the mutation becomes deadly.
Oh, what a pretty bridge. I think I'll cross it. It's breaking. Oh no, help me.
The 4th paver must be larger in length than the original center paver, or it simply falls into the stream when the center paver is, again, somehow removed. And there's the whole removal of the center paver. How? Somehow? Why?
Nobody knows.
That example was supposed to counter irreducible complexity. but shows how eager and willing the evolutionist is to deny the alternative, even to embarrassment. The attempts to deny irreducible complexity, and there are others, are examples of the desperate need to deny the reality of God. Although the four pavers illustration as a counter to irreducible complexity is simplistic and superficial, it illustrates the shallow bias of evolutionary thinking. Look at the tree of evolution. The evolutionist believes that life moved seamlessly from one node to another. I would say, look at the gigantic holes between the nodes. The evolutionist would say, and has said, that's just an overview. The nodes can be filled in. No, they can't. That thought that there exists data points to fill in the transitions is total mythology. Not science, mythology. But now I'm triggered. Let's get back to Reggie, Dr. Schnellhund and Clyde.
Just give us what in your tiny mind is your strongest argument for creation, and I will be happy to deflect. To me, the long, sharp stake to the heart is the second law of thermodynamics, entropy. Entropy! I can't believe Clyde brought that up publicly. Let me apologize here for the dryness of the following discussion. You might want to pause, get a drink of water. The law of entropy states that a closed system will move to a state of less useful energy over time. That's also interpreted as moving from a state of complexity to randomness, from order to disorder. Entropy is statistics, and statistics are anathema to evolution. Anathema? Who says anathema? Me? In a closed system. Even you, my senile friend, would know that the Earth is not a closed system. Ergo, entropy does not apply. And I said ergo. If a system is closed, then entropy applies, right? Yes. Do you remember high school logic? If P, then Q? Of course, you slime-soaked bottom feeder. Let's let P equal the system is closed, and Q equals entropy applies. If P then Q then is, if the system is closed, then entropy applies. Would that be correct? Yes, you rusty bobblehead, but watch your P's and Q's. And according to basic logic, if P then Q is true, if not P, then not Q is not necessarily true. In other words, my dear Dr. Swissnot, if the system is not closed, it is not necessarily true that entropy does not apply. Rhetoric, you being a weenie head. Then from that, I deduce that the genome, the highly complex, highly ordered, information-rich blueprint for our life could not have just evolved. It could not have happened by chance. It could not have been assembled without intelligent input. Entropy would not allow that increase in information, that increase in order, that increase in complexity. But there's constant low entropy input from the sun. Intelligent input. Energy from the sun is not intelligent input. The hot air that comes from your mouth is not intelligent input. Think of it this way. Here's a picture of me with my Triumph Spitfire
a lot of years ago. That Spitfire is information. There was design that went into it. Parts manufacture, assembly, quality control, all information. If you would throw into a pile iron oxide, pigment, glass, carbon, plastic pellets, and let that pile in the sun, would you believe in a bazillion years that the energy from the sun would make that Spitfire?
Given enough time, anything can happen.
And there it is.
We don't know.
We are information. Everything around us is information. Information uses energy, but energy does not create information.
But your being a denier of evolution does not say God did it. You're just saying it wasn't evolution. It's all negative.
Dr. Schmelfoot.
It's Schnellhunt, you festering carbuncle. Just one more time.
We have only two choices. Either everything we see evolved by chance, or an intelligent creator created it. Saying it is not one is equivalent to saying it is the other. Did you get that? Look me in the eye. If it is not evolution, it must be an intelligent creator.
You're a biased, pompous idiot.
So you want to ignore the first two things, carbon-14 in diamonds and the soft tissue in dinosaur bones?
You really hate me, don't you?
No, Reggie. A great deal can be learned from the why of evolution, the drive behind it, the history. The theory of evolution, often presented as a scientifically proven fact, is, in truth, a biased philosophical construct born from a desire not to submit to God's law. Someone put together a great AI summary of the history of evolution. Check this out.
Evolution has moved beyond evidence-based science. It has become a worldview. A worldview telling you life is an accident. You are just another animal. There is no creator to answer to. For over 160 years, this idea has been pushed as fact, shaping education, politics, and morality. But when we trace its origins, its evidence, and its impact, a darker truth emerges. This isn't science, it's a deception. A narrative the fallen would use to pull humanity from God and into worship of self. Let's be clear, microevolution is real. Bacteria adapt to antibiotics. Moths change color in polluted cities. Generations of life adapt to environmental changes. This is variation within existing genetic limits, no new body plans, no entirely new creatures. Macroevolution, the claim that all life came from a single ancestor by blind chance, requires huge leaps that have never been observed. The fallen blur this distinction, selling small adaptations as proof of life creating itself. Why did Darwin's theory spread so quickly? Because it gave people what they wanted, freedom from God. When On the Origin of Species was published in 1859, Enlightenment thinkers were already rejecting divine creation. Darwin gave them a convenient narrative. You are not created, you are an accident. This is how the fallen work. Sell the lie first, then scramble to provide evidence. When the evidence didn't exist, fraud filled the gaps. The Piltdown Man, hailed as the missing link between apes and humans, was displayed in museums and textbooks for over 40 years, from 1912 to 1953, until it was exposed as a hoax. a human skull and an orangutan jaw chemically stained to appear ancient. Haeckel's embryo drawings, created in the 1860s, were faked to show human embryos resembling fish and reptiles. Haeckel himself admitted to the fraud, yet his drawings remained in textbooks for decades. Both were celebrated as proof, displayed for decades until exposed as hoaxes. But the damage was done. Generations were raised in a world where evolution was proven as fact, instead of the fiction the evidence provides. This isn't science, it's a pattern of deception, exactly how the fallen sow lies. Convince, repeat, and keep repeating even after the fraud is exposed. Darwin himself admitted his theory could collapse if the fossil record showed sudden bursts of life. He wrote, "If numerous species have really started into life all at once, the fact would be fatal to the theory." He was talking about what we now call the Cambrian explosion, and he knew it was a serious problem. Darwin hoped future discoveries would fill in the gaps, but 160 years later, the problem is worse, not better. Cambrian fossils show dozens of fully formed, complex animals appearing abruptly without transitional ancestors. By Darwin's own words, this is fatal to the theory. Yet the theory remains, not because of evidence, but because the narrative is too useful to abandon. Why push a theory with holes this big? Because it serves a spiritual agenda. Evolution tells you, there is no creator. You're just an animal. Morality is survival of the fittest. You define truth. You are your own God. This is the same ancient whisper from the Garden of Eden. You will be like God. The fallen simply repackaged it for modern times. Look at the pattern. Rapid acceptance before proof. Fraud presented as fact for decades. Darwin's own standard for failure met and ignored. A philosophy perfectly aligned with rebellion against the Creator. The fallen push this narrative because it removes God from his rightful place and puts man on the throne. Truth seekers, don't fall for it. Examine the evidence yourself. Life is not random, accidental, or meaningless. It was designed. It has purpose.
The gold standard of evolution is the link between man and not man. Of all the holes in the tree of evolution, that is the most critical. And in a very long time of searching and study, that hole has not been filled in. Even evolutionary scientists cannot agree on acceptance of any candidate for the missing link, not a single one. Whatever you read in any textbook, that hole in the evolutionary tree, along with all the others, still gapes.
Or like paleontologist Colin Patterson said, if I knew of any evolutionary transitions, fossil or living, I would have included them in my book on evolution.
Or, as paleontologist Stephen Stanley noted, the known fossil record fails to document a single example of phyletic evolution accomplishing a major morphological transition, and hence offers no evidence that the gradualistic model can be valid.
The human evolution fossil record contains 200 overturned ape-man species. With each ape-man that's discovered and then disproven, the theory of human evolution gets rewritten all over again. In fact, after 166 years of studying human evolution, seems like the only thing that's evolving is the theory itself.
Aldous Huxley was blatantly honest about the desire for a theory of origins that eliminated God. I've posted this before, and I'll end with it again here. An excerpt from his book, Ends and Means. Pause the post if you want to read it.